and it's possible, I think, that Jeffrey Epstein might have been mistaken about, just sort of how his alliances worked. And that I could sort of imagine that he felt absolutely protected when that was the wrong way to look at it. And that he may have gotten himself into a mess that allowed us to see into something that we wouldn't have otherwise seen into had he been a little bit more careful,
Yeah. Yeah. I also think go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. No.
I was going to add that I also think it's interesting that this, when he was initially arrested and, his death, when that is then discussed by these kind of mainstream news outlets or, streaming series and whatnot, I think that in the most cynical view you could possibly have of that was that it was, conveniently spun in such a way that it was very, it attempted to be damaging for Donald Trump. If Donald Trump was not president and if the media wasn't so invested in attacking him, I don't know that you would see that coverage. I really don't. And that doesn't mean, and I'm not in any way defending Donald Trump. I'm just saying
I hear you.
In a jaded way, I think that may be part of the reason that it was brought up in the first place, unfortunately.
Wow, that's an interesting way of thinking about it, because otherwise you think it would have just been covered up.
Yes. And that's why I think you see the focus on Alex Acosta, but the omission of Acosta's explanation for his role in the sweetheart deal. So you have,
that's right.
You have people saying basically, look at Alex Acosta, former labor secretary for Trump, basically kicked out because of controversy around Epstein. And it makes it seem as if the Trump administration is made up of these people who wanted to protect this pedophile. I think that it's a convenient line of reporting. It's a convenient narrative. And unfortunately to see the abuse of potentially thousands of young girls used in such a jaded way simply for political gain is really an indictment of the media. Honestly, it's really something you don't want to conclude, but that's the way that I look at it.
That's really an interesting angle. I hadn't thought about that at all, but even the term that you used, wedge issues, because I'm not a journalist and I don't know if that's sort of a typical trade term. What does that mean, wedge issues?
Well, I don't know that's a journalistic term. It's just basically, in my opinion, issues where, the issues that make it appear that there are differences between the Republican and Democratic Party. Issues that are not going to be, that will not ever be legislatively solved, but that appear that make conservatives or liberals, Democrats, specifically Democrats, I'm really not talking about independent progressives, but Democrats kind of feel like we've got to get our guy in to defeat the Republicans because X. And I think those issues are the ones that are championed by the media, because in reality, if you look at the issues where the Republicans and Democrats align, whether it's war, whether it's protecting people like Epstein, whatever, you come to the inevitable conclusion that the parties really are much more similar than they're different. So when I talk about wedge issues, it's really the issues that provide that cover for the duopoly, really.
Yes, and so then the Acosta case could have been brought out because of that kind of wedge issue. And otherwise, it might not have actually, because, like you say, he did say specifically that, and I think it's even in the Filthy Rich documentary.
No, it's not. That's what's so fascinating. They talk about this is what blew my mind. They discuss, they actually have film clips from the hearing in which he said that Epstein belonged to intelligence, but they don't have that part of it. They basically, they even have commentators asking the question, well, why would he do this? They don't answer.
So it's not in there.
No, but it is. It was reported by Vicky Ward in the Daily Beast that that's what the explanation he gave, and they go right up to that finish line, but they don't cross it. They go right up to it, and I think that's where I see the narrative being shaped specifically to go after Trump. I mean, they will acknowledge Bill Clinton's role, but they really want to show the footage of Trump, dancing, I think, next to Epstein at some point in the late 80s or early 90s. And again, I'm not saying that it's wrong to show that or to discuss.
But it's just the way the whole thing is presented. It's presented in a way that is simply made to be one of these wedge issues, instead of looking at the reality of what has happened. And like you say, to use that with so many thousands of girls being at risk and so on, to use that as a way of illustrating something about Donald Trump just seems, well, I don't know. I mean, unethical always seems too light a term. You know, it seems deeply wrong. And I can't quite understand why there are not more independent media sources looking at these things. Again, you know, it's not really hard to see that there's something wrong with the way this is being reported. But then there are so few people speaking about that it starts to seem as though, I mean, for me personally, I got interested in it, and even talking to my colleagues or the people that I work with in putting together my own interview show, you know, they more or less said, well, why would you want to talk about that? You know, that wouldn't be something that you'd really want to pursue. And also sort of saying, well, isn't that all taken care of? And you know, and isn't that really let's say a horrible topic to talk about? But from my point of view, it's a much bigger issue about the truth and about journalism and about whether it's possible to actually even discern the truth through any media anymore. You know, is it possible to find out what is true, even if you do research? And I think it's very hard. I really do. You know, I think that you have to spend a lot of time going through media that are not mainstream media, and maybe some that are imbued with conspiracy theories and so on, but to find out what actually might be happening. And most people don't have the time and energy to do that. And then I think also that there is a tendency to want to let other people be the authority when it comes to the truth, you know, and that's a very deep human tendency. Some of it is, I think, probably really sort of childish or infantile, and other part of it is simply that you don't have all sorts of energy and capacity in your life. You have to focus on what you're doing, so you can't do all the work yourself. But I have always thought that journalism was supposed to be the part of our government that corrected for the lies that people in power were inevitably going to do. You know, that they were going to lie. I didn't think that our intelligence agencies were going to lie inevitably, but apparently they do too. So I always sort of thought journalism is the corrective for that, and that corrective isn't around anymore, you know. And so it's a very scary situation in that regard. It's hard to tell what is the truth, or how to pursue the truth, or even to try to be on the side of the truth in this moment of time.
Yeah, I think that's actually that's the why cover this story. That's the importance of it. It's not only the abuse of children that went unreported and unprosecuted for so long. It's the fact that when you look at this story, you end up inevitably with an indictment of the media and its role, not as truth tellers and not as a check and balance on power, but as a vehicle of power, as a mouthpiece for power. You know, the basically PR firm for power. I think that basically it really exposes the actual role of the media. That's why that's one of the big reasons this is so important. And it's another also that's why I also parallel this story with WikiLeaks, because the persecution of Assange, the defamation of him, and also the attacks generally on WikiLeaks are another issue that also ended the same place, where the good journalism that WikiLeaks really did expose not only abuses of power by corporations, by governments, but the complicit role of the media in those things. Right. So I think that is a central reason that this story is important now, alongside all of the other stories that are also pressing in the media. So.
And so I want to thank you, of course, for your work and for all that you've been doing. And, you know, I really particularly wanted to talk to you because I feel that your approach is thoughtful, has a larger framework around it, and can make sense of things in a way that ordinary people can understand.